So one of my earliest games teachers, who over the years has become one of the leading movement specialists in Waldorf games and movement programs, told me that you compete for your first breath, and that competition was a vital part of human life, and children need to be exposed to competition and they need to compete. But at that early age, it's not about competing against someone else. It's not about finishing first and having someone else finish second, or leaping past someone at the finish line. It's more of working in coordination with friends, working in coordination with classmates to compete maybe against another team in a game of sticks and stones, where you're running across a line to retrieve a stick, or you're running in a game of tag. That's not competitive, where if you step across a line you're out of bounds and the game stops, but where the game is continuous. Because that's more of the way life is. You don't make a mistake in life and have a whistle blow and everybody stops and you have to recover from that. That's not really true to real life. And so we don't want children in the early grades to be competing on teams where there are referees and it's an adult constructed environment. We really want children to be playing in a children's environment. And that's what games in a Waldorf school is about. It's about games that children have played over the centuries that our games teacher can bring and teach the children, because they're healthy for children.
I think the things that I learned after I got here, first of all, was that this is an alternative way of teaching. And it's much more of an emphasis on learning by doing. And when the children are studying a particular subject, they will be hearing about it and they will be writing about it in their main lesson book. And they may typically also be doing a painting or an art project that supports what they're learning. They may be learning a song about it. In some cases, they may be cooking some food that has something to do with that subject. And so you get this sort of complete immersion in the topic, and it's a different approach to how to learn. It's much more hands-on, much more experiential, but it's proven to be very successful with our children.
Mm-hmm. So I remember in my own schooling, I would study and take the test and pretty promptly forget what I had learned. And I just have to believe that the way they're learning these materials has got to stick with them and be much more meaningful to them than it was the way I learned it.
So recently, my son, who is in fourth grade, had to complete his first book report, his first lengthy written project. And I was really struck by the incredible enthusiasm that he brought to this project. And he sat down and wrote out 4 pages in one sitting, and I'd never, ever seen him able to even sit still for, 5 minutes before he was in this classroom in this school. And he was writing a report on a book that he loved, and the teacher encouraged them to write it on any book that he wanted. But in the Waldorf mode, they were writing. He was also drawing a map, illustrations, modeling with beeswax, and presenting his entire visceral experience of this book as well. And he just came to that and was able to handle intellectually something that I didn't think he was able to. And I really attribute it to the way that the teacher approaches the subject and to the Waldorf curriculum, the way it's the whole perspective of the topic that they're studying. You don't just sit down and memorize something by rote, but you kind of ingest the whole thing by osmosis, and then it percolates in the child for a while, and then the child produces this wonderful experience of what they've learned.
I chose to put my children in the Live Oak Waldorf School because I wanted them to be in a school and in an environment where they enjoyed learning. And when I first came up to the Live Oak Waldorf School after doing a search on the internet about various schools in the area, different from the public school, I came up here to observe one of the teachers who is now my son's current 6th grade teacher, and I was in such awe at how he presented the material to the class and how exciting he made such a mundane topic to the children, and how they were so involved in the learning on that day that I knew then that this was where I wanted to put my children.
So as we see the young child developing, we try to see where they are in whatever balance it may be. Perhaps there's a child whose will forces are not so strongly developed, or a child whose social skills or their emotional health is not as healthy as it could be. So we are able, as the class teachers, following along with our classes, as these groups of children are developing, to form our lesson plans so that we draw forth those skills or those capacities from each child. I know, knowing my own class, when it's appropriate to use a social setting to enliven a lesson. Or I know when it's time to be just in movement, just to develop the will forces that will be necessary to carry the child through a particularly strenuous activity, through something that's going to require great focus. So it's not just enough to drill them, it's not just enough to give them rote memory lessons. If I can bring all of this to the table, then the child is able to express himself or herself more fully. And in that way, I'm able to draw forth the strengths of the children as well, so that I know the strengths of the will forces in a certain group in the class will help carry those that need that balance in the other part of the class. I know that those children who are particularly warm and open socially can invite those children in who are not so that they all feel a part of the class or a part of the lesson in a way that imbues the whole classroom.
My daughter Haley graduated in 2004 from Live Oak and had attended Live Oak for 12 years. And one of the things that I find most amazing is the reports I get back from her teachers in just how much she contributes to the classroom environment and how upright she is. And to me, I sort of have taken who she is for granted because I know her so well, but to hear the reports coming back from the community beyond our own community is very satisfying, I guess. Feels good.
One of the nicest things about being the student's teacher for 8 years is that they will naturally go through some difficult periods in their 8 years here. One's right around the 9-year, we call it the 9-year change, when children at that age really begin to leave their childhood and they start to question perhaps if their mother and father will be alive for very long, or they start to really look outside of themselves. And the world sometimes can seem a little harsh to them. And to be a teacher of children who are going through that and knowing them, having known them for a couple of years prior to that, is such a blessing because I'm able to really know them and I know their families, and they're comfortable with me. And so they can get through those times of transition with somebody who they really trust and are really familiar with. Another one happens about age 12, when they also are starting to become adolescents. And a teacher can, at that time, know that highest self in that child. And when they're trying out all their things and bucking against authority, we're able to just, in the meditative work we as teachers we do each night, we're able to really bring those children up and really look at who they are and address that part of who they are each day anew. And each day they have a new chance to be their highest self. And that for me is the biggest blessing of being a teacher all throughout these 8 years, is to be able to go through those times with them. I have a class who just received their standardized test scores back, and they have always said, well, so-and-so is doing this in that school, and so-and-so is doing that, relating to cousins or neighbors. But I just shared with them today what it was that they scored as a class, and they were in the 90 percentile, 91%. And I said, that would be an A, nationwide. I said, really? We would be? And they were very impressed with themselves. But they don't put themselves, it's not the kind of school that really pushes academics, so they don't have that air that goes along with it. They don't have that attitude of we're smarter than the next guy or we're better than somebody else.